What's up everyone, this is Luke. Many of you have asked me before to talk about things outside of just betting on this channel, so this is my first attempt at doing that. I'm going to be talking about Fantasy World Cup. A lot of you have asked me for stuff in this area. I did produce a beginner's guide to Fantasy Premier League in the past that thousands of people have seen on the website, so I have made guides before, but never about Fantasy World Cup. They only come around every 4 years, so considering I didn't have a website or a YouTube channel back then, would have been quite hard for me to do. Other people have asked me for money making stuff, and that stuff is going to come. I am going to be doing stuff on that, so if you're interested in that sort of stuff, hit the subscribe button. If you're interested in finding out about match betting, there is a link to the free beginner course in the description below. In this video, I'm going to be talking about three main things. I'm going to be talking about how you can use your 100 million budget and structuring your team effectively. I'm going to talk about player schedule brackets, and I'll explain what I mean by that shortly. And finally, the best times for chip usage. That is your wild card, your maximum captain chip, and your bench boost as well. Let's talk first and foremost about your budget. If you've played Fantasy Premier League before, or FPL as I will refer to it for the rest of this video, you will probably know, or you may not if you're bad at it, that it's generally advised to avoid something called a good front eight. What this means is, because you can only play 7 of your front 8 players, you shouldn't really tie up funds in all 8 of them, because you can only ever play 7. You don't want to be benching an expensive or half decent player each week. So most of the time people will choose a very cheap midfielder or a very cheap forward and make that their default bench option each week, and you can play them as and when you want, but most of the time they're only going to pick up a couple of points. I actually think this strategy for Fantasy World Cup is terrible. Now, why is this? Well, this is because in World Cup Fantasy, we actually have the option of substituting out players every single day. We don't have to decide on our set 11 for a game week that's specific to FPL, and in the World Cup one, we don't have to do that. This means if we start a player and he plays poorly, we can substitute him out for a player that hasn't played yet. This gives us 2 bites of the cherry or more if we need them. This means if you have a typical 4.5 player in your front 8, which is normally either a defensive midfielder from an average team or a forward from a poor team, they're pretty much guaranteed to get you 2 points. Now, when you have 2 or more bites of the cherry, as I say, don't really want a 2-point option. You always want to make sure you have a player capable of scoring or assisting. I know that many people are going for that strategy of having a front 7, as it were. I want to keep my formation and my team as flexible as possible to allow for all eventualities. I will be showing you my team on screen very shortly, and I'll talk you through that too, but I want to talk more about the basics before we get on to talking about specific players. The low risk strategy of being able to substitute in decent players every single day actually means that very expensive players become worth a little bit less. When you have a very, very expensive player, they have to perform and they have to be captained in order for them to be a good use of your funds. Yes, if you have a very expensive player, you can captain them. If they don't perform though, you're stuck. You're probably not going to have too many other good captaincy options because the good captaincy options cost a lot of money. If you get one of the most expensive players, you're probably going to have one other captaincy option at best. Similar to my plan with the substitutions, I want to make sure that my captaincy options are flexible as well. This means that in my team, I'm aiming to have more very good players than I am less great players. One more thing to consider about your team is the fact that bonus points aren't included in Fantasy World Cup. In FPL, forwards are heavily rewarded when they score with bonus points. Pretty much if your forward scores, you're going to get bonus points. And in a lot of cases, you're going to get 3 of them as well. Because forwards don't get those bonus points in this, it makes them a lot less attractive. I believe that midfielders provide by far the most value in this World Cup game. My advice is to load up on them. The only issue is that a lot of very good midfielders are classed as forwards for some reason, so it does mean that our options are a little limited in that area. Quick bonus tip for you as well. The deadline of this game means that we will actually be able to see the teams from the first game before the deadline occurs. So you will actually have an extra hour to make transfers than you would when compared to FPL. So if you have a last minute decision that you need to make regarding that first game, which is Russia against Saudi Arabia, wait for the teams to come out and make your decision then. I'm going to pull up some images that I've made on screen for you now, which look at the second point that I wanted to talk about, which was schedule player brackets or player schedule brackets. Whatever I called them earlier on. By brackets, what I'm referring to is the number of teams or the number of players that all play on the same day. This means that you can't substitute them out for one another, and it also means that you can only choose one captain from that bracket. This is something very important because you want to have a varied range of player brackets in your team for both substitution and captaincy purposes. Not only do you need to think about the really good players that you have, but you also need to think about those cheaper options as well. You need to make sure that you have goalkeepers that play on different days, and you also need to make sure that you have defenders that play across a period of days days as well. What I've done with these brackets, they're more like captaincy brackets, I would say. They are the best teams in my opinion. You probably know that there are a few under the radar teams, a few hidden gems that play for those teams as well, but I have just tried to stick to the big guns for this just to make it really easy for people to understand. So let's take a look at the brackets that I've come up with now. Bracket 1 just includes Russia. This is because on the first 2 game weeks, Russia play on their own each day. So if you do have a Russian player, you're going to want to make sure that you captain them in those first 2 weeks, maybe the 3rd week as well if you really want. I personally don't have a Russian player at the moment, so this is the least important bracket to consider, but it's worth noting if you do have a Russian player, you're going to want to make sure that they are your captain. Even if it's a defender, a goalie, midfielder, a crap player, it really doesn't matter. The second bracket is one of the biggest brackets that we'll look at: Uruguay, Portugal, and Spain. These 3 teams play on the same day as each other in all 3 group games. This means you can only captain 1 player from those 3 teams. It also means you can't do subs in and out. So if people are trying to fit, I don't know, Cavani, Ronaldo, and Isco, for example, 1 great player from each team, you're only going to be able to captain 1 of them, which means you only really want to be picking 1 of them. As hard as that may be for some of you, it's just not good value to tie up a lot of funds in players that you can't captain. In bracket 3, we've got France and Argentina. These 2 teams also always play on the same day as each other, again, meaning you can only captain 1 of them. So for those of you looking at pairing Messi and Griezmann together, perhaps isn't the best idea for the reasons that I've already outlined. In bracket 4, we've got Germany and Brazil. These 2 teams play on the same day as each other twice in game week 1 and game week 3. This means in round 2, you have the option of choosing a captain from both of these teams if one of them fails, of course, which makes these 2 slightly more favourable than the other brackets in my opinion. In bracket 5, we've got Belgium, England, and Colombia. These rotate and don't always play on the same day as each other. Colombia start by being the team that get their own game week in round 1. This means that you could captain someone from England or Belgium and then look to a Colombian player like James Rodriguez if they fail. If all of your other captains blank, then you've got James Rodriguez to rely on in the final round of game week 1. In the second round, Colombia and England overlap, but not Belgium, but Belgium overlap with Germany. That makes things slightly more trickier to consider as well. And then in the final round of the groups, all 3 teams play at the same time, so you can only captain 1 of them. That's the main brackets covered. I hope all of that has made sense to you. Yes, you're going to need players from outside of these teams as well, but mainly looking at captaincy options there, or your premium players that you're going to be tying up a lot of funds in. What I'm going to do now is talk you through my current team. It's subject to change. I'll be tinkering with it right up until that deadline. I'll give you my thoughts on some of the players, why I've picked certain players in certain positions. What I want to say before I show you my team is if you are enjoying this video, if you could hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you're interested in more, that would be very much appreciated. Hit that bell button so you're alerted every time I post. That would be great too. Thank you very much. Let's pull up my team on screen right now. Now the team that I've got behind me is probably my strongest 11, as in the 11 players that I'm most happy about, the 11 that I think will score the most points overall, but they aren't optimized based on their bracket or when they play. So the starting team that I will have looks a little something like this. So going over my team and reminding you of the points that I've already told you about, the goalkeepers that I've got El Hadari from Egypt, a cheap option from a defensive team with a half-decent group, and I've also got Willy Caballero, the Argentinian goalkeeper. I think he's one of the best value picks. Assuming that he starts, it looks like he will be the #1 goalkeeper. The one thing that I'm concerned about with my team is I have no defenders from Germany, so I would quite like Manuel Neuer if the funds would allow. I've got Varela from Uruguay in my defence. They've got a great group and a really good team as well. He costs 4.5, so he's really good value. The only issue is that he's not 100% nailed on. Again, like Caballero, it looks like he will start, but it's not guaranteed, so fingers crossed on him. I then have Miranda from Brazil. I think he's a really good value pick. He's not one of the most expensive Brazilian defenders, but he is the first name on the team sheet in that defence as far as I'm aware. Finally, I have Kieran Trippier from England. I actually think he's probably the best value pick on the game. I know England always let us down at the World Cups, but I just think Trippier provides fantastic value at 5.5. Nowhere near the most expensive defenders. He's pretty much guaranteed to start at right wing back, and as a wing back he gets the benefits of the defensive clean sheets, but he also has plenty of opportunities to get attacking returns, especially when you consider the fact that his first 2 games are against Tunisia and Panama, probably 2 of the weakest teams in the tournament. Although, again, this is England. Who knows what we're going to do. On my bench for my defenders, if any of these blank, I have Augustinsson from Sweden. He costs 5.0. I'm led to believe he's first choice at left back. Sweden look like they've got a pretty good team, to be honest, so I'm happy with that pick for now. And finally, my final defender is Yoshida from Japan, costs 4.5. Japan aren't really expected to do much in this tournament, but he's a very cheap option at 4.5 and has a really good goal scoring record as a centre back. He's from the final bracket, so he will always be the last option for me if all the other defenders blank. In midfield, my first captaincy option is Isco. He's from bracket 2, although he's my first bracket that plays because I have no Russian players. First game against Portugal, a little bit dodgy, and Spain have just sacked their manager as well. Who knows where that could go, but I just think Isco is the best value Spanish player, other than maybe Sergio Ramos, who takes penalties, I believe, and is a real goal threat at all times. Couldn't quite fit him into my team yet. Maybe I will if I keep tinkering, who knows, but I do think that Ramos is a good pick. I then got Meza, who actually may be a surprise captaincy pick for me. I have no French players, so he's my only bracket 3 player, other than Caballero, who I'm not going to be captaining. Meza is a 5.5 player who is actually reportedly going to be starting alongside Messi and Di Maria up front. Despite the fact that Argentina have a wealth of attacking talent, he is tipped to start, as I say. I did have Lanzini for that same reason, and now that Lanzini's injured, Meza looks like he could be the one stepping in and hopefully providing some great value at just 5.5. Next up from bracket 4, I have Thomas Muller as a captain option, and from that same bracket, although a Serbian player, bit of a punt this one, Milinkovic-Savic. He costs 7.0. I also like Tadic from Serbia as well, but Tadic has been pushed out wide to make place for Milinkovic-Savic in the team. He looks like a bit of a beast, and with a good group, who knows, maybe he'll get some good results for me. At 7.0, Milinkovic-Savic, without a doubt, my biggest punt in my team. Finally, on my bench, I have James Rodriguez. Already spoken about him in the player bracket discussion a little earlier. I think he's a great option for a variety of reasons. The fact that he's always going to be playing last, so if your other captaincy option's blank, you've still got someone great to play. Also, Colombia have got a good team. They've got a favourable group as well. He was also the top scorer in the last World Cup, so I think he could be a very good pick indeed. Up front, I've got Alex Iwobi from Nigeria. Not too thrilled with this pick, but he costs 6.0. Probably one of the better value forwards that you can find. He's definitely an enabler for the rest of the team. You know, if you're going to have a variety of captaincy options, you're going to have some cheaper players that are nailed on, guaranteed to start, and could still score. You know, Nigeria aren't the worst team in the world. They definitely could get on the score sheet. Iwobi is pretty much their star player. He's nailed on. He could score. Hopefully he does. But he is the player that I'm eyeing up for James Rodriguez, so if Iwobi blanks, James Rodriguez will probably be coming in for him. I then have Gabriel Jesus from Brazil. Currently, he'll be a toss-up with Muller for who will be captain in 2 out of the 3 game weeks. And finally, I've got Harry Kane, who will be battling James Rodriguez for the captaincy in 2 out of the 3 game weeks. But I am actually debating downgrading Harry Kane. Realistically, if one of your captains does perform, if one of your captains grabs a goal in the earlier matches, are you going to risk switching that captain to someone else? Personally, I don't think I will be. A goal in the group stages is pretty massive. It's unlikely that a player will get 2 goals or more. Of course, there's always a chance, but low risk strategies are usually very rewarding in fantasy football. I don't know if at 11.0 Harry Kane provides enough value for me based on the fact that I probably won't captain him if one of my other captains performs. With that in mind, I might downgrade him to Griezmann, who's 1.0 cheaper, and this would allow me to do a couple of things. I could upgrade Meza to a 6.5. There's not loads of 6.5s that I got my eye on, but one of them is from that first bracket, a Russian player called Miranchuk. As I said a little bit earlier on, we will get to see if he is starting. Because he plays for Russia in that first game, we will get an hour until the deadline to see if he starts or not, so who knows if I could bring him in for Meza. But I think what's more likely if I do downgrade Kane to Griezmann is that I will upgrade Caballero to Manuel Neuer. Okay, that's enough about the structuring of teams and about my team as well. Let's move on to the final discussion now, which is about the usage of chips. We have 3 chips: wildcard, maximum captain, and bench boost. First one I'm going to be talking about is the wildcard. Now, I've seen a lot of people talking and saying that they're going to use theirs after the second group game. This means that you can obviously create your team, wait 2 matches, wildcard, then have that third group game. After the groups, you do have unlimited transfers to make between the groups finishing and the first knockout round. So you're already going to get a free wildcard, as it were, so I don't know if using it then makes the most sense for me. I'm actually planning to use it after the first knockout round. So we will have the 3 group games where you will get 1 free transfer between each round. So effectively that's just 2 free transfers in the group. We then have unlimited transfers after that third group game, and I'm going to be pretty punty in that team, I think. I'm going to take a lot of risks because I'm planning on using that wildcard after the first knockout round. It's very high risk strategy to have already used your wildcard to then only be able to use 3 transfers? What if there are a lot of upsets? What if you end up losing between 5 and 10 players from your team? To only then be able to make 3 free transfers is a massive issue in my opinion. So that's when I'm planning on wildcarding, especially as I'll get 5 free transfers before the semi-finals. So even if a few of my players get knocked out in the quarterfinals, I'll still have 5 transfers to try and save my team for the semis. The good thing about the semi-finals is because there's a 3rd and 4th place playoff, none of your players will be eliminated. You know, if they make it to the 3rd and 4th place playoff, maybe there's going to be a bit of rotation. Ultimately, you're going to have players that are still in the tournament in your squad. So to have 10 transfers before the semi-finals and finals, you're going to have a full team then. So I think it makes the most sense to me to wildcard after that first knockout round. For the maximum captainship, I'm currently thinking of playing it in the quarterfinals. This is because there are only 2 brackets and 4 teams play in both of them. So you only have a 50-50 shot at getting the right captain. As we've seen in the group stages, we get 5 or 6 attempts at getting the right captain. So to then only have 2 attempts, that's quite high risk. So I will probably go with the low variance route of using it in the quarterfinals to make sure I get the right captain in that round. The bench boost, I'm a little bit unsure. I'm thinking either the first knockout round, so while I've just had unlimited transfers from the group stages finishing, so I should have a full squad, or maybe in the finals, so you've got the final and the 3rd and 4th place playoff. In both rounds, I'm pretty confident that I'll have a full squad of 15 that are all playing. To me, it makes sense that you want 15 players playing when you're going to use your bench boost. I'm not seeing a lot of strategy or theory about it, but in my head, that seems like the ideal time to play it. That brings an end to my hints and tips for the Fantasy World Cup game. I hope you found them useful. If you have liked this video, then please could you hit that like button? It would be very much appreciated. If you're interested in seeing more stuff from me as well, hit the subscribe button with notifications turned on. And I'd love to hear your feedback in the comments below. Do you have any questions? I'll try and get back to you. If you want to tell me you hate me, that's always fine. And make sure you share this video with a friend who could do with a helping hand as well. Thank you very much for watching and best of luck in the Fantasy World Cup.